Hello everybody, my name is Joe Shelton and I'm a singer, songwriter, music producer, and recording artist from Indianapolis, Indiana. Over the last year, I've stepped out and performed music on over 200 stages. Along the way though, I met a lot of great people that I didn't expect to. They were inspiring artists and songwriters and musicians, and I want to share all of that inspiration with you. So that's what this show is about. Moonshine equals love, shine in love on the music. Moonshine and Music starts now. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of Moonshine and Music. It is a fantastic show today. There's a good friend of the show and a good friend in general of the host. My man Steve Kennen is the guest today on the show. And I met Steve quite a while ago. Steve has hosted open mics around the city for years. He's toured all over the place. He, came from the West Coast to here in Indy, and he's brought his own style of music, and he's a very underrated player in the scene. He's a fantastic entertainer, fantastic player, and a great guy, and I know you're going to love the interview today. So without any more fanfare or messing around, let's get right to that interview at the Books and Brews store that's located in Castleton. Here we are with Steve Kennen. Hey, so welcome to Moonshine and Music, Steve Kennen.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Now, that's not your real name, but your album has your real name on it.
I decided to call my my full name by Stephen Michael Kennan, which is my birth name. Mm-hmm. When you're a kid with a PH version of Stephen, the kids tease you and call you Stephanie. So I always changed it to Steve when I was younger. And my mom was the only one who called me Steven for a number of years. But it was kind of my way of taking it back, of getting it back. Because I do think it sounds rather authorish, which I consider myself much more of an author than I do a musician. So.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the whole theme of the cover is the typewriter and all of that.
And the old book. Yeah. I grew up, I had 3 milk crates full of old leather-clad books, classics and such, from a garage sale. And I got grounded a lot when I was a kid, so I read a lot.
You got grounded? That can't be.
I got grounded a lot.
So where did you get grounded? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Colorado. Spent a little bit of time in Las Vegas, Texas, and then we moved to California when I was starting the 5th grade. And it was, without sounding corny, it was kind of like I'd been there a million times in my life, but I'd never been to California before. But when I moved there, I felt really, really at home there.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up out there in Southern California? I know that from knowing you, I know you've done skateboarding and...
Yeah, we grew up just a few blocks from the ocean, so skateboarding and surfing were kind of a way of life. The kids who grew up there, were 3rd, 4th generation skaters and surfers, and then there was also the multicultural thing that was really, really cool, big part of my life, the Latinos and the Asians and the Eastern Europeans and Scandinavians, and even there was a whole lot of the Muslim population. And the best thing about that is when you go to your friend's house to eat, it's always amazing food. So in California, you can eat really well. And the multicultural thing also had a real big effect on the music that was out there. If you remember the bands like Sublime and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it was a lot of things at once, and that was kind of a new thing. Back then you were either a punk band or you were a rock band or you were an acoustic folk band. You couldn't do, but the bands in California were doing that. They were doing, start out the song reggae and end up punk, or start out the song folk and end up metal, and come back to folk. And I think I really felt a kinship with that, because to me, it's hard for me to classify bands. Like, I just know that I like stories. Songs have kind of just saved my life. I can remember the first time I've got a list of maybe 50, 60, 70 favorite songs, and I can tell you about the first time I heard them, where I was, the smells. So yeah, songs have just been a huge part of my life.
Well, what's one of those? I mean, like, you know, a good example, because we need good stories for the show.
Okay. You know,
sometimes we're stuck with without them, and we really like good stories.
Well, the cool thing about being a kid in the 70s and 80s was there was these great big wooden stereo systems. The speakers were on one end, and you'd open up this side, and then there would be all the records in here, and then you open up this side, and there's the turntable.
Right, you fold down the turntable. We had one of those. Yeah.
And I would put records on, and you could stack them. It would play one, and then would take it off and put the new one on.
Right, the automatic record changer.
So yeah, I would put on like 6 records, and Jackson Browne is the first thing that came to mind. Jackson Browne Running on Empty album. I used to just sit, and my mom would come in the living room, and I'd be crying, and I didn't even know why I was crying. It was just these songs just touched me, and I was like, people can do this for a living? Like, it always fascinated me that. And then if you know about the Jackson Browne Running on Empty album, it's all about being in a band and being on the road, and it was all either recorded live, on the bus, or in hotels, which I always thought was really cool, because you can hear that. Like, and back then we had albums. Yeah, there was a thing called record albums back in the day, and the only thing you knew about the band was when you opened up that record and read what was in there. That's the only thing I knew. But they did a really good job back then of listing the credits, who played what. And I always thought it was cool because there was 2 songs where the bass player was playing a cardboard box as a bass drum on the tour bus. And if you listen with headphones, you can hear that bus changing gears. And I always thought that was really cool, you know. It was, so sometimes production can suffer a little bit if the intent and the emotion of the song is still there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I find that's true. I really like, I personally really like live albums in general.
Yeah.
Like, some of my favorite records are live records, like live You Get What You Play For from REO Speedwagon.
Oh, yeah.
Or like Bob Seger Live Bullet.
Yeah.
You know, like those records, like I grew up on, like, you know, you have all the other ones, so you've heard all the hits or whatever, and you throw on one of those live ones and just feels different, you know, like the way that they're singing the songs is a little different,
and usually a little bit faster, just a touch faster, because they're jacked up, and
or maybe a little bit off, even, like they don't even, like, you know, may not completely stay in the same speed.
Yeah.
But they don't really care because they're playing it live, you know.
Yeah. And there's some artistic, and when you're there in the audience, when you're watching a show like that, it's okay they mess up a little bit. It's totally okay, because you've already listened to it 600,000 times and 34 on the way to the show, you know, so it's okay if they mess up a little bit. And that's, you know, I always kind of take that spirit when I play live. I'm like, you know, yeah, I want to give the best rendition of the songs that I can do, but also every once in a while, if you're just feeling something and you just want to take it in a new direction, that's okay too.
Yeah. So, what age were you when you started playing? You were pretty young. You were listening to them on the wooden box.
Yeah.
You know, which is like, you know, a picture of it is needed, but everyone probably knows what we're talking about. If they're
well, just for the record too, everybody, when CDs came out, everybody said they sounded better, and I'm like, I don't know. They just sound. They have more high end, and they don't have that low mid quality that you get from playing vinyl on a great big wooden box, a lot of wood resonating it.
Well, what I thought about CDs is that they sounded better because they didn't have any scratches or skips. A brand new record sounded better to me even then, but you know, you pull out those ones that are like, you know, your buddy brings one over, you have to hear this Kiss record.
Yeah.
And it's like
Kiss Alive.
It's like where it's like, I want to rock and roll, I want to rock and roll, I want to rock and roll, like, because it gets stuck.
Well, we had a record that had warped because my brother had a turntable that he left in his windowsill.
Warped always good because they, like, it rides the wave.
And then you could take, like, 6 pennies and tape them to the arm, and it would ride over the wave if there was enough weight, even a real big
You gotta get through the wake.
Yeah. I listened to the Rolling Stones Tattoo You like that for 2 summers.
All right, we're going to listen to Rolling Stones. I need a sack of pennies. Let me.
That's right. It's part of the deal.
That's funny. I still put a penny on mine sometimes to play some of my. But I have a stack of vinyl. I'll pull it out, and we need a penny because there's too much wave in this record.
Yeah.
But I think that was the thing about CDs for me, was they were just pristine.
Yeah.
If they got scratched up and they started skipping, then it was really horrible, and you just throw them out. Whereas with the records, they started to skip.
See, I heard a story that the first year that CDs came out, they were just about indestructible.
They were.
And the record industry was like, whoa. In the past, we've never had that. Everything degraded. So they started making them of lesser quality. When they
were expensive to make that way as well.
Yeah, that's probably true.
The DVD, like the Blu-ray discs, are pretty indestructible.
Okay.
Have you seen a Blu-ray disc?
Yeah.
They're really hard to scratch. You can, obviously, if you take a carpet knife to it, but
MP3s can't get scratched.
Well, true. And but they don't sound as good either.
And somebody tried to explain that whole theory to me about how there's random zeros and ones that are pulled out of it by an algorithm, and then the player puts it back in, supposedly puts all those ones and zeros back in, and I thought, that doesn't sound like a very good way to go, but it's convenient.
Well, it's called data compression.
Yeah.
But, that sounds like a really geeky conversation that I'm not going to jump into. You tried to troll me.
We could get geeky.
Me there.
We could get geeky.
I could get geeky really fast. I'm sure there's plenty of music geek going on in the interview already. We don't need to get into the tech geek side of me, because how MP3 compression works is definitely a geeky topic.
Slippery slope.
We're going to need more beer if we're doing that. Or some actual moonshine. We're in a brewery, so now we're doing the beer.
Yeah, it's a Books and Brews.
But that's okay. And the beer here is good. So
it's very nice.
And they have these nice mugs. You can get in the mug club. See. But anyway, I guess rolling forward, when did you start writing songs?
I started writing poetry and short stories probably 3 years before I actually wrote a song. And it was kind of an adaptation of one of my first poems that I wrote. I had a teacher in 5th grade that really encouraged me to write. And I was kind of always afraid of it before that. So in about 5th grade, I really started writing a lot. I had notebooks that I would just fill up about every week, and I just keep them under my bed. Still have a whole bunch of them. So I was in about probably 6th grade when I wrote my first song, and I could barely play guitar. I think it had a G, an F, and a C. Go figure.
As most songs do.
Yeah, most of the good ones. And it was one of those things where I really didn't play it for anybody probably till I was in about 9th or 10th grade. I never played any of the stuff that I wrote because I was so insecure with it. But it was always one of those things where it's about the only thing on the planet that makes any sense to me is writing. And every time I've ever had a hard time in my life, songs and writing songs has always pulled me through. So I would say 8th grade was when I really thought, hey, there's something to this. And I started studying it, started really, reading the stream of consciousness stuff, Jack Kerouac and things like that. And then in high school, I got really into the poetry of Charles Bukowski, which is kind of an R-rated poet who got way more famous after he died. He was kind of a Van Gogh of the poetry world. And then I saw a documentary about him, And I thought, I had cold chills because I saw him. And actually my freshman year when I was at Long Beach State, I went to a coffee shop, poetry reading, and he was reading. And
that's cool.
He took the time to put down his wine bottle and cuss out the whole left half of the audience because they weren't quiet enough. He was a great big imposing man, and I remembered it. I thought, wow, that guy's a really good poet, and I definitely know he would kick everybody's ass in here. And then when I realized I had seen Charles Bukowski, I was just filled with regret that I didn't know who he was back then. Maybe I could have tagged along and picked his brain a little bit. It's one of my great regrets is that I didn't get to meet that guy.
Well, that's cool. So you started writing around 8th grade. When was your first band? Was it around that same time or a little bit later?
Well, living in Southern California, music was really prevalent. There was bands like in every neighborhood, it seemed like. You know, there'd be bands playing in the garage. But I grew up with the son of a really famous jazz drummer. And his name was, the kid I knew was named Kent Murray, and he was already a really good drummer when we were in the 6th grade. He was just unbelievable. So we actually had a band in 6th grade. And we didn't write into our own music for that band. It was just all cover songs, and we played on the last day of school of 8th grade at lunchtime. So that was our big debut. And then I was in a couple of different bands in high school, and then was in a couple of bands when my time at Long Beach State, and that was back when Sublime was a backyard band. And that whole concept of playing shows every night and having a group of people that kind of went and did security/beer sales to fund the whole operation. And I saw the DIY aspect of being in a band. Sublime was making a ton of money before they ever had a record deal, playing up and down the coast in California. Of course, it's a lot, backyard parties are a lot easier going by the cops out there. They don't really care about it out there. They're fine that you guys can do whatever you want to do as long as you're not too loud by midnight.
So what was your, what were some of your early band names?
The first band I was in was called Search and Destroy.
Search and Destroy. Yeah. Man, you guys are hardcore.
We weren't though. We weren't a hardcore band. I played in some kind of punk bands back in the day, but that one wasn't. It was kind of like a classic rock base. We did Billy Squier covers. We did Van Halen. We did the Kingsmen. We did gosh, I can't even remember who else, but. Yeah, it was just the camaraderie, the band camaraderie was really cool. It was just a way to, you know, have fun with your friends.
So what brought you over to Indiana?
Well, my parents moved to Indiana when I was in college. My dad was a NFL football coach for about 20 years. And he came here, he was an offensive coordinator for the Colts. And so I came out here and did some more school at IUPUI and lived with them for a little while. And then I found out about Broad Ripple and kind of discovered that community back, you know, going back about 20 years ago, and just really felt a kinship with it. And I felt like Indianapolis was still a city that was becoming. It was on its way up. And that really, even though it was really far away from the beach, that was okay with me because I saw the possibilities, and I just felt there was something about the city that I could just tell was on the way up, and I wanted to be part of that. I've been here a long time.
So, and this is your first solo record, the new one?
This is my first solo record. Yeah, I was at a point in my life about 10 years ago where I went through a divorce, and hadn't played music in about a year, literally hadn't even hardly picked up a guitar in a year. And I picked it up and started writing again, and something just made my back stand up straight, and I was like, it's time to start writing again, it's time to start playing again. And it was kind of a second job for a while, and then it just kind of mushroomed into, I was playing, 200 nights a year for about 5 years there. And the whole time I was writing, and I decided about 6 years ago to really start writing. honestly writing, and I decided I was going to write 50 songs and pick the best 15 for a record. And it's a long record, and I realize by today's standards that that's a really long album. When I was listening back to it, but I'm like, that's okay. It was a documentation of the process, and it was okay that it was long. And I think I told you the story of I was 99.9% done with it, and I lost it when I was transferring it from my computer to an external hard drive. And I thought, man, I spent 2 days looking for it, trying to find it on the external hard drive, and it was just in this weird code that I didn't know it was going to take. It was going to take a month.
That's got to be like the most painful thought in the world, too.
But then again, it was like, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on this. And I'm like, okay, those were just the demos. I spent 6 months on them, and I remember them. I remember every track because I did some multi-tracking on it. I played drums and bass and lap steel and electric guitar. It's mostly an acoustic guitar and vocal record, but there are some other elements on it. And I knew every last melody, every last drum beat, every last bass fill. So I just did it again. I was like, I'm doing it again. And I don't care how hard it is, how painful it is. I'm going to get the damn thing done. That was just, and when I was done, it was so relieving. Like, I didn't believe it. I kept thinking I'd send it away to be mastered and printed. And I'm like, something's going to happen. It's going to get screwed up again. I just know it. I just know it. But it didn't. It was out there and it was fine. And my dear friend, Kyle Krauskopf, is an artist who lives in Seattle now. He's originally from Indiana. I told him about the concept of having the typewriter, because I still love to type on an actual typewriter, and having the book and the table, and he did this watercolor painting. It was just perfect. So it really worked out. I'm glad that, because I wasn't gonna, he was so busy that I wasn't gonna bug him about doing the record, but then when I had the collapse, then I thought, I'm gonna get Kyle involved in this too. So it gave me time to let the whole thing come full circle.
Well, it's a great record. I've listened to it several times. Sally is going to be a stand-up is my favorite tune on there. I've played it. I don't know. It's ridiculous. If you go out and look, probably most of the plays for that song are me.
That's my son likes that one too.
So anyway, I dig that song, and I want to hear you play some songs today. So are you about ready to do that?
I'm ready to do that.
All right, man, let's jump in there. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Next week on Moonshine and Music, we're going to chill out with Brandon Wadley and some of his fantastic music. And this is what it sounds like.
I can hear the calling of the saints. Tell me what you want me to say. I can touch the light up on the walls. Tell me what you want me to feel. I can hear the cavern of the saints. Tell me what you want me to say. I can touch the light up on the walls. Tell me what you want me to feel.
This first song is called Sally's Gonna Be a Stand-Up. My friend Joe said he really likes it. My son, who's 3.5, likes it too. It's actually a true story. Sally's gonna be a stand-up. She's got 4 good jokes. They've already tried out 3 of them on a couple of the local folks. Helen tells her over dinner, Sally, you're sure to fail. Sally swore that the open stage is how she's getting out of hell. Coming out to support her, like Mabel and Bobby Jean. They're gonna start the crowd out to laughing, so the audience won't see me. And Helen told her that she's crazy,
Sally feels so alive. There ain't no failing at anything when you start when you're 65. She's been waiting all her life. She's ready right now to fly. She could make them all at one time. It'll be alright to die. It's been so long that she laughed herself. She's never forgotten how. She's gotta find her light again. She's sure the time is now. And she don't care to think that she's old. No, 'cause she's got time hanging with. And after 35 years of crying, you know it's led her right up to this. And maybe if she made them laugh, her old heart would feel light again. Maybe if they all started laughing, well, a couple of them would want to be her friends. Other than that monthly check, she ain't got a lot to lose. She has got an existence that she would like so much to prove. And she watched everything that she's ever loved run off or fade away. She's got a crowd at the comedy club or the Sunday night open stage. Sally's gonna be a stand-up. What else is she supposed to do? Who knew she'd be so funny after everything else that she's been through? But sometimes the funniest jokes are told when you're talking about your truth. It's never too late to live before you die. Old Sally, she's living proof. She's been waiting all her life. She's ready right now to fly. She could make them all at one time. It'd be alright to die. And she's watched everyone that she's ever loved run off or fade away. She's got a crowd at the comedy club or the Sunday night open stage. There's a line out the door at the comedy club or the Sunday night open stage. Thank you. This next one is called Grandpa Never Talked About the War. My grandfather fought in World War II. He was a CB that fought in the Pacific Campaign. And actually he was part of the construction crew, the construction corps that is really a bad deal because he got put in first to build the docks and the bridges and everything for all the troops coming into the Pacific War. And he never talked about it until he was well aware that his death was coming, so told me a lot of stuff about it. I wrote this, gosh, probably been almost 5 years to the day. I remember it was this time of year when I wrote it. It's called Grandpa Never Talked About the War. Well, my grandpa was fighting in the Second World War, half a world away when his second son was born. The South Pacific sun could have never burned like the will that my grandpa must have had to return. Had to make it home just to meet his son, see what his wife and first child had become. He came home more grateful than before. My grandpa never talked about the war. Well, that second son of his grew up to be my dad. Tried so hard to tell me about the pain Grandpa had. Half pulled away at 20 years old. The things that they'd seen made the memory cold. The dying, the fighting, the friends that they had lost, defending their country at whatever the cost. My grandpa was gentle, never showed me his scars. My grandpa never a ton of pride to his boys. Dad taught me, and it brings me such joy to know that my blood ran through that great man as he bravely stepped foot on those faraway lands. And as hard as I'm sure he must have had to be, he was always quiet and peaceful when he was around me. His smile will remind you what your family was for. My grandpa never talked about the war. Grandpa never talked about the war. He said, what the hell were we fighting for? There's never no need to settle no score. My grandpa never talked about the war. When he knew that he was dying, my grandpa called us round. We listened intently, tried not to make a sound. He told us about that destruction he'd seen, the death and the chaos and all the places they'd been. He tried to spare us the bloody details. He was trying to point out something else. Said, don't let them tell you that's what human beings are for. Something so terrible as the Second World War. They made it sound like some big brave thing, but my friends got cut down, man, that's all I see. How could they know at 20 years old how much hell this conflict would hold? They went there as children, had bright hopeful eyes. They came home as men, changed by his size. And he came home, but there were so many more that never came back to talk about the war. My grandpa never talked about the war. He said, what the hell were we fighting for? And there's never no need to settle no score. My grandpa never talked about the war. Grandpa never talked about the war. He said there's nothing that's worth fighting for, and there's never no need to settle your dad's score. My grandpa never talked about the war. Thank you. This next song is actually the first song on my record. It's called Like Knives, and it's kind of just about writing and its catharsis and how healing writing and words can be. Syllables on fire, phrases for the fighters that we send out onto the wire. Wings that carry the sweetness, the colors of our lives. Words for the revolution that is still the cuts, just like knives. Strong to the fight. We want a hungry paragraph man on their cuts, just like knives. All those things that just happen to be, they're no longer a consequence to me. And all the little things that always used to bring me down. A lot of nights when I just gave up, I'm trying hard now to stand up. Words, they always bring me back around. fading lights go out. Help us take the answers from your slowly dying mouth. We hold up the trophy, trade it in on life, and we scrawl urgent phrases on these pages, and they cut like knives. All those things that just happen to be, they're no longer of consequence to me, and all the little things that always brought me down. A lot of nights where I just stand up, I'm trying hard now to stand up. The words, they always bring me back around. The words, they always bring me back around. The words, they always bring me back around.
Yeah, Steve Kennen rocking the Moonshine and Music stage at Books and Brews in Castleton, of course. And it was very, very awesome to have you on the show today. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Moonshine and Music. Come in and check in next week on next Sunday and every Sunday for another episode where you get to have an inspiring chat with some great songwriters or indie musicians or whoever it might be that week. Next week, of course, we got Brandon Wadley. I know you're going to love it. So check in with us then, and we'll see you next time on Moonshine and Music. Moonshine and Music is a presentation of Notlehs Entertainment. Copyright 2018, all rights reserved. The producer for today's show is Joe Shelton, and our cameraman, grip, and stunt double was Brent Lee Smith. Please join us again next Sunday for Moonshine and Music.